guys, thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode of Dogman Stories. Tonight we have an encounter all the way from Italy dated back to 1955. So, let's begin. It's from a guy named Bill. And Bill writes, "Let me begin with a bit of background information. My name is Bill. I am 66 years old. I live in Amsterdam, Holland. Although I am an American and have spent most of my life in the United States, I have been a tattooist for 41 years, and I am well known for my tattoo shop in Amsterdam. At work, I am frequently talking about Dogman and Sasquatch. One day, my colleague, Frank Perdosi, who comes from Italy, says, 'Bill, what the hell is this Dogman you talk about?' As I explained it to him, he interrupted and exclaimed, 'Ah, Lupo Marino. My dad saw one in Italy in the 1950s. After further discussion, we decided we would attempt to get his father's story for a Dogman show and all of the listeners. Since Frank and I have a working trip planned for Italy in October, we decided that we would visit his dad during the course of that trip. Signor Paradiso is 85 years old and speaks only Italian. The old man was pleasantly surprised to discover that these creatures are currently the subject of radio shows, books, and websites, research, and discussion. He had no idea that any of this was going on. I assured him that many people in America and elsewhere are seeing these creatures and coming forward with their stories. Signor Paradosa was very happy to share his encounter with people who take this subject seriously. Over the course of his life, he had, for the most part, stopped talking about it due to the unusual ridicule and scuffling that people would do to him, and people with encounters are enforced to endure the humiliation. He wishes that there was an Italian version of the show. He would love to listen to all the episodes and hear other people's encounters and stories." Bermuda is a small town about 15 kilometers from the sea in the Matera province of southern Italy. In 1955, the area was mostly farmland, which forest-covered hills. The nearest mountains were about 50 kilometers from Bermuda. The area had rivers such as game and wild pigs. When queried about game, Signor Paradosa also mentioned foxes, bats, and falcons. It doesn't seem likely that those animals would be a food source for dogmen. But Signor Paradosa is old, and this happened a long time ago, and those were the animals that he remembered. I asked him if there were any unexplained farm animal disappearances, and he either didn't know or couldn't remember. I'm willing to bet there were. I think we can all assume that there were fish, rabbits, wild fowl perhaps, and other small animals available. However, the Matera region has something unique and unusual. Cave dwellings dating back to the Paleolithic period are found everywhere, carved from the soft mountain stone of the hillsides, utilizing pre-existing natural caves, accompanied and refined over thousands of years, right up until 1950. When, due to lack of proper sanitation, the last remaining occupants of these dwellings were removed by the Italian government. Many of the caves and towns have facades like a house with windows, all carved from stone, and in recent years they have been restored and provided with electricity and plumbing by the wealthy for homes, restaurants, and other businesses. However, these dwellings, thought to be the oldest of the Italian peninsula, can be found everywhere in the hills and forests. lost and abandoned by humans for a millennium. The perfect lair for a lupo marino, ready-made with windows, several rooms, high and dry, no rent. Not bad for a dog man. For those of you interested, if you Google Montera, Italy, you can see photos and get more information on these caves. I pity the poor person who may have wandered into one of these places and woke up a dog man. We won't be hearing their story on Dogman's Story Show. Now let's get to the encounter. It was the mid-1950s, a hot summer night in Bermuda. Senor Peredosa cannot remember the exact date or year, so let's say 1955, which would have made him 25 years old. It was a clear night in southern Italy, as it usually is. Young Senor Peredosa was coming home in a car about 2 a.m. with his friends who apparently lived in the neighborhood. When they had parked and gotten out of their car, that's when they saw it, standing on two canine legs next to a tree about 12 meters from them and about 1.8 meters tall and weighing about 70 kilos. There he was, Lupo Moreno, the Wolf Man. Bear in mind, these are an old man's best estimates after 60 years. Making scientific observations was not the primary thing on his mind while this was happening. He did say it was brown with a wolf-like head, but much larger than a normal dog or wolf's head. He did not make eye contact with the creature, nor did he detect any unusual odor. The dogman was breathing heavily and growling while darting from tree to tree. Everyone scattered towards home and wherever they were, or wherever, and the dogman, for some unknown reason, zeroed in on Senor Peredoso, who was madly fumbling with his keys. He finally succeeded in getting inside his house. I have no doubt that the dogman could have gotten him or any of the others if it wanted to, but as in many of the encounters that people report, the dogmen, for whatever reason, just have a look and leave. Senor Perdoso wanted everyone to know that the legend of the Lupo Moreno is something that dates back further than he knows in this area. There are written records from the Romans talking about these creatures, and they have probably been since remotely Inesquadio. Senor Peredoso also admits to experiencing some kind of karmatic payback. He had always scoffed at the legends and made fun of people who reported sightings and encounters, that is, until he saw one himself, after which he got a taste of his own medicine. I would like to do a bit of follow-up to see if people are still seeing dogmen in that area. 60 years is a fairly long time. Thank you, Bill. Well, Bill, that is quite an encounter, and I would like to apologize for any words that I may have mispronounced. I am not familiar with Italy, so I want to apologize for that. Also, I want to apologize. I have been sick, and I am having to read and breathe out of my nose. So I just want to apologize for that. And also, I have another encounter that someone sent me through a letter. And this one reads, Dogman Stories. I would like to share an encounter with you. The first encounter was with the devil ape. My grandpa told me that he and his brother were hunting in Ashe County, North Carolina. He said him and his brother were deep in the woods over 3 miles in the hill. Well, they had been hunting for a few hours and it was getting dark. Well, as they were leaving, they heard something behind them, and it sounded like a bulldozer pushing trees aside. They took a look, and they took a light out, and when they shined at the sound, they saw something over 9 feet tall with blood red eyes. They shot it with 30 off 30s. It made the most horrible sound ever. It covered its eye and ran into the bush. They ran out of the woods, and this was in 1935. And the next encounter the same person sent me was, this is the first time my grandpa saw a dogman. It was 1944, a few months after D-Day. He was ordered to watch a hill. He and 3 other guys took a Jeep with a .50 caliber. They drove up the hill and found 3 dead Germans torn all to pieces. It looked like a freaking mortar went off on them. He stopped the Jeep and got out and looked around. It was dusk now, he said. They heard 5 long howls on the hill. Loud howls, very loud then. They heard movement from the hill. Soon 5 dogmen were on the German dead. They didn't notice his Jeep or his guys until a guy on the .50 clocked it. They looked at them and growled a very deep growl and started to move to them. My grandfather told them to open fire. Call open, they tore the dogman apart. Cut one in half, they fired over 1,000 rounds at them. There was nothing left but pieces of dogmen left. They decided to get to the top of the hill for the night. The next day, the bodies were gone, and big paw prints were everywhere. Wow, that's kind of crazy. The Germans were gone too. They never told anyone about what happened. And they never told anyone about my grandpa told me this on his deathbed. Wow. So 5 Germans were tore apart, and they seen 5 dogmen eating the Germans, and they used guns and lit these suckers up. And the next day, the Germans and the dogmen were gone. That is crazy. Now, his grandpa told him that on his deathbed. And I would like to apologize again to the person who sent me this story. I've been sick, and I probably did not read it right. And I know I left out some of the guns that were used. And the reason why I left out some of the guns that were used is because some people would get the bright idea to go buy these guns and try and kill a dogman with it. So I decided to leave the guns out. Plus, I don't know what some of these guns are